It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantatrax TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, Tatooine indeed. Welcome back to our weekly recap show where we recount all the Star Wars news of the week. Plus, on top of that, we'll be recapping this week's episode of Ahsoka, which was something quite special. So what have we got coming up on today's show? So coming up first, we're going to be talking the High Republic Phase 3 coming to Dark Horse Comics. Marvel have released their December solicitations as well. Hayden and Rosario Dawson reuniting on Ahsoka. We'll be hearing from them. Guillermo del Toro confirmed he was involved in a Star Wars project. We'll hear what was said about that. ILM VFX is back once again this week, and we're looking at the Ahsoka's T-6 Jedi Shuttle. Disney are planning $60 billion of theme park expansions with all that money they're saving not paying writers and actors. And controversial. And I'm going to be careful how I say the next one. Cuutopia from Mattel. Galactic cuteness and Star Wars collide. And we'll be checking out these new products. And talking of products, Hasbro PulseCon was this past week, and we've got all the reveals from that. And there we go, the writer's strike. We'll be talking that as well. I'll be getting in trouble by saying something inappropriate. And we'll also be recapping episode 6 of Ahsoka, as much promised. And this week, joining me to discuss all that and much, much more from Fantatrax.com, Mr. Paul Naylor.
Evening, Brian, or good morning, Brian, wherever we are in the world.
Yeah. How has your week been?
Mixed.
Oh,
yeah, no, it's been okay. It's been okay.
Can we improve it with a dose of Star Wars news?
A bit of Star Wars always helps me get through the week. Absolutely.
Let's get stuck into the news before we talk Ahsoka. So first up, we've got Dark Horse Comics arriving 6th of December. The High Republic Phase 3. We're into the home stretch for the High Republic, the third and final sequel phase. After the initial Phase 1 and the prequel Phase 2, we've come to the sequels. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, judging by the movies, but we're here. We're almost here, coming this autumn. And Dark Horse is starting Phase 3 with issue 1, December 6th, written by Daniel Jose Older. Have you been following much of the High Republic? Have you been able to keep up?
I haven't, Brian, to be honest. It's not an area of Star Wars that's really sort of got me interested. And I only say that because there's been so much other stuff going on that had it been the only thing about, I would have probably been all over it.
Yeah.
But because there's been so much other content, I've focused on that. Is it something that you've been reading?
I've tried to keep up with it, and I've kind of started to struggle. Phase 2 I didn't really enjoy. This sort of went back in time, did a prequel kind of series.
Right.
Didn't really work for me, and it didn't help that there was a lot of problems, I think, with publishing and getting things published, coming off the back of COVID and the lack of availability of certain products and so on.
So what is the time span for those of us who don't really know much about it between one, two, and three?
You're about 200 years before the Phantom Menace, and you're covering a significant period of time across that.
Yeah.
Not quite really clarified, but a significant period of time across that kind of area, and it's like a defined kind of separate kind of space and time, I guess, from Star Wars. And there's some little elements of Yoda, for example, appears and so on, and there's little tiebacks that connects everything together, and I'm sure will feed into more Star Wars content in the future. But they've kind of been given their own.
Is Yoda significantly stronger because he's that bit younger?
Not really. He's kind of a peripheral character to most of it rather than central. Right. He kind of popped up, I think, just to show that he's there. I'm kind of agreeing with what Phil's saying in the comments, that there's far too many stories, young reader versions, comics, adult reader novels to keep track of. And I think the casual kind of fan would probably agree. But having said that, if you went to like the High Republic panel at Celebration, it is like a cult in that room. And they're so passionate and so into it, and they know every little avenue and aspect of it. So much like my opinion when it comes to Star Wars animation, and I miss it all and then start struggling when I watch Ahsoka, there's people that are so heavily invested in the High Republic. It's been very successful.
It's a bit like back in the day, back in the early 90s when Heir to the Empire came out, the Timothy Zahn trilogy of Thrawn stories. There was nothing else about. There was literally nothing else about. So I embraced that because it was my route back into Star Wars, if you like. Whereas at the moment, like Phil was saying, there's so much content about there. You have to
pick and choose.
You do. You have to be selective. Yeah.
And I think that's been the big benefit of the High Republic, but also it's sort of fault as well, in that it's its own isolated thing. You can happily choose not to watch it or not to consume it, and it doesn't affect really anything else at this juncture. But those that do consume it absolutely love it. I think things will maybe change a little bit when the Acolyte airs, because it's set on the very tail end of the High Republic sort of timeline, and I don't think it's going to be heavily connected into the books and comics, but we've already seen that some characters are going to appear on the TV show, or at least one character is going to appear in the TV show. I'm interested. Phil's also making a great point. There is a first phase comic compendium coming out soon that'll help people catch up as well. So,
cheers, Phil. That'll do me. That'll help me catch up.
And Mark's saying there's about my point on that. Like, that's going to bed in that area even more. And I think when Phase 3's up and they can almost release this area to the rest of Star Wars to sort of connect into and join up, I think people will attach it next. I think they've been quite protective in making this its own thing. And no doubt about it, Lucasfilm have thrown money at it like they've never thrown money at a publishing kind of initiative before. So
it's been quite unique in that way, hasn't it? Like I think it was Phil was saying that there's been stuff for young kids, older level of reading, if you like.
They've tried to, for juniors, for young readers, for adults, comic market as well. We're calling the Marvel comics adult comics for such a thing like comics, and the Dark Horse stuff is targeted more at the younger age group in comics as well. So they are trying to cover all bases.
It seems second only to what happened when Shadows of the Empire came out, when we got everything but a film. It's always had that level of investment, hasn't it?
Yeah, and Philip making a really good point on Facebook here that the High Republic connects directly with Jedi Survivor as well. That's one of the huge sort of, I guess, ventures that they've gone into where they've really connected it. They haven't really done it so much with the TV shows or the films, or even other books within or comics really within Star Wars galaxy. So Yeah,
I'll have to get that.
as,
Yeah,
as,
I'll
as
get the
Philip says,
compendium
it's
and catch up.
making that connection kind of makes the game a little bit more personal. I think people that were High Republic fans really got invested into Jedi Survivor. So I think the opportunities going forward, you've got a really rabid fan base that when Phase 3 is over, they're going to want to consume other Star Wars content, which,
Yeah.
having spoken to some of them at Celebration, they really consume the High Republic and don't really consume much else of Star Wars. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've
you've got
experienced
that
that, haven't
whole
we?
fan base to tap into, you know?
Yeah, you know, a lot of it's down to your age when you jump in onto Star Wars. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been to Celebration when we've seen people that are purely into Rebels or purely into the Clone Wars because
Yeah.
that was their age when they jumped on. So, yeah, you're going to get the same with this.
Yeah. So definitely, I think it's going to get tapped into a lot more going forward.
Mm,
So this is the
yeah,
start of Phase 3. It's also part of Marvel's solicitations for December as well. But
yeah,
kicking it off as Marvel did last year, they've kind of got a one-shot issue that's going to almost foretell what they've got planned for the coming year. All the writers on board, all the artists on board, and they're just going to give a little bit of a preview as to what we can expect from the year ahead. They did this last year and it kind of worked quite well.
yeah.
And we've also got, as I mentioned, the High Republic Shadows of Starlight issue 3, which is a mini series. And we've got going from Charles Soule. And we've got Star Wars The High Republic issue 2, which is their Phase 3 series. Mr. Newbold asking the question, why are we back to issue 1 again on Revelations? Don't know. I guess it's going to be an annual thing, so it's going to be Revelations 2023 issue 1. Philip asking the question, where we go? I left a piece of news off this week. Have I? What news have I missed? Yeah, Phil may be saying new phase, new start, I guess. Quite possible. And we've also got Mando Season 2 continuing with issue 7. Rodney Barnes continuing that, which is basically you're going episode by episode of and getting an adaptation, which I kind of like. It's nice to have, but it's also nice to have original stuff as well.
Yeah. It just feels a bit off that it's not happened at the same time as the series coming out, doesn't it? You know.
Yeah. Did I miss the announcement of the third Jedi game? Have I? Have they announced a third Jedi game? I've completely missed that news. Is it breaking news tonight that I've missed? I've been offline most of today. Someone let me know in the comments. I've missed something.
I can't help you. I can't help you there, bro. I don't know.
Oh, there's Mr. Newbold. Fallen Order and Survivor is going to be a trilogy. There we go. Go to fantatracks.com. You'll get all the news. I was offline. I was prepping the show this morning. It clearly hadn't broken by this morning. So you go. Get all the up-to-minute news on fantatracks.com. We'll talk about it next week because I'm very invested in the Jedi franchise at the moment.
Yeah,
I'm interested.
Now that you've got a console. Now you've got a console.
I'm interested that the lead director was announced last week that he was leaving, and asked on last week's show whether they would continue that franchise or not, and they are. And yeah, Philip there, he recorded the panel. Apparently it's his news. So yeah, Mr. Newbold confirming Philip's getting the credit. So thanks, Philip, for that. That's breaking news on the show. And you can read about it on fantatracks.com. That's interesting because, yeah, as I said, we spoke about it on last week's show as to whether they'll continue it now the director was leaving. I suggested maybe the director's leaving because they're choosing not to continue it. So great that they are. Continuing on the comics front, Dark Droids as a mini-series is coming to an end. You can imagine my thoughts on this one, Paul. I hate droids.
Yep. But you've been loving that one.
Yeah. I quit collecting comics, and I've collected comics since 1977. Every single Star Wars comic and variant, stretching into thousands of comics. And I stopped about this time last year. And by the time that various series that I'd been collecting finished, it took me around to about May of this year by the time they got published, because there was lots of things delayed, especially on the Dark Horse front.
Yeah.
And I stopped just before they started a droid series.
You must
So
have the force. You had some insight there.
I had some insight. So I've missed that one. On Dr. Afra, issue 39. Um, Great series, Alyssa Wong. Go to Fantatrax TV on YouTube. You'll see a great interview we did with her at New York Comic Con. I'm going to be there myself in a couple of weeks for this year's New York Comic Con, so looking forward to that one.
Dr. Afra's got to make it some sort of TV show at some point.
I
Really, really
kind of
popular character.
she fits quite well, I think, to appear in the likes of the Mandalorian and the likes of Ahsoka.
Mm,
I kind of
yeah,
thought that if they were looking for ancient artifacts in Ahsoka, it would have been a nice little introduction for her, even if it was just a one episode thing.
there's still 2 episodes to go. Who knows?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mr. Newbell as well. Afro would have been fun on TV, but she's great as a character in comics. Um,
yeah.
Talking to TV, we could do with more bounty hunters. Mandalorian's kind of moved away a little bit from the bounty hunters, but if you're still loving the bounty hunters, Ethan Sachs has got your back. Star Wars Bounty Hunters 41 as well. And that's the end of the comics. So, yep,
I like that.
interesting.
That's a cool cover. I like that.
So, droids again. Droids is a big thing in comics at the moment. So,
Yeah.
I've picked the perfect time to be out of that game. um,
Oh dear.
Philip as well making a point. Afra could be good as a animated character, which is a great shout
Yeah,
because we've gone kind of a little bit quiet on Star Wars animation a little bit. We're kind of getting little mini series, but nothing major on the scale of the Clone Wars, Rebels, Bad Batch. We've got Bad Batch season 3 that might be the only new Star Wars content we get for quite some time at the start of next year. But beyond that, I kind of expected them to be doing more in the animation realm with Disney Plus.
I think if they do another series that's not connected to any of the current animated shows, it'd be nice to see another different style
Yeah,
being used. Maybe one of the styles that we've seen hinted at in the Visions strand of shows. Pick something from there and go with that. I'm not saying for 1 minute we go down the Aardman route for Captain for Doctor Aphra, but yeah, it'd be good to see a different sort of style, something perhaps a bit more sort of sketchy looking, a bit more stylized.
yeah,
But uh,
definitely.
but yeah, you're right. I mean, with everything that's going on with the strikes over in the States, we're going to swiftly run out of content for some time.
Yeah, we'll be talking the strikes in just a little minute because it's getting
Yeah,
interesting.
I'll be
Um,
able to catch up with the High Republic then, no, so it's all good.
I think is that one of the core reasons all these writers are getting caught up on the High Republic.
That's it. All the time reading it.
Yeah. Um, Obviously, we've got a strike on at the moment, so interviews with actors is kind of quite limited. But we're getting little snippets coming out here and there that have obviously been recorded um, prior to the strikes. And Hayden Christian, Rosario Dawson, been talking about being back on screen together on Ahsoka, and it was kind of revealed that they actually met in acting classes as teenagers, which was kind of
Right.
a
Okay.
cool thing to
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of find out. They've kind of got this history, and Rosario kind of commenting on having Ahsoka back and coming, having to face, I guess, Anakin struck Vader, and Hayden making the point that he got the phone call to talk about being a part of the Ahsoka project. He was thrilled, and
Yeah.
I think even more so than in the Obi-Wan show, that the character of Anakin really came through in this one, and I really
Yes.
enjoyed
Yeah.
last week's episode, and I thought it was quite a nice. Don't know if it's going to be the last we see of Hayden on Star Wars, but it was like kind of like a nice cap to what he's contributed to the Star Wars franchise. I thought last week.
It was a clever way of being able to go back to the Clone Wars era, and even the young girl that played Ahsoka in her younger years, brilliant.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think Hayden, quite rightly has got to actually utter some decent dialogue this time that perhaps wasn't always the case. So yeah, no, it was a really good episode last week. I mean, the last two episodes, but we will be talking about episode 6 later on. The last two episodes have been really strong.
Yeah. Um, and they did really well together on screen, Rosario and Hayden. But as you say, he did incredibly well with the younger Ahsoka as well. So it
Yeah,
wasn't just a case of him connecting with Rosario because they've got this history as well. He was really back on top of his game.
yeah. Well, I think there was some talk as well that Hayden and the young girl have been talking. Oh, wouldn't it be great to do some Clone Wars live action stuff? So who knows? That
Yeah,
could happen. That would be great. But yeah, Rosario, I mean, she's had that sort of fantastic opportunity to work with Luke Skywalker and Anakin Skywalker. So, and I believe she's quite a Star Wars fan, Rosario. So, she's living her best life at the moment.
yeah, absolutely. Um, Someone that's probably still living his best life, but has missed out on the Star Wars opportunity that maybe he did want.
Yes.
Del Toro confirmed that he was working with an unproduced Star Wars script from David Goyer. Um, it was kind of David Goyer that kind of confirmed it on a podcast appearance, I think, and that he'd been involved in a Star Wars project about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And it got quite evolved, I think, to the point obviously they were doing a lot of concept art on it, and he said there was a lot of cool art produced for it. Del Toro on X or Twitter, whatever you would call it, confirming this all to be true, and adding the cryptic element that he can't say much, maybe 2 letters, J and BB is is that 3 letters, he said. It's the kind of things that he could speak about.
Yeah. I think I saw somewhere that there was talk that it was going to be based around Jabba, wasn't it?
Well, I think that's people are suggesting the J,
Yeah.
and but I kind of thought John Boyega in BB-8 story maybe,
Possibly. Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, it's kind of in a way it's another one a disappointing Star Wars project that isn't to be, but I think it takes a bit of guts to turn away Del Toro from a project as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I kind of respect them from the point of view that they've been able to say no to him. That just the project wasn't what they wanted or wasn't good enough or whatever.
I mean, who's to say, it could get reignited later down the line. Um, you just need to change your personnel, and all of a sudden, all things are on the table again, aren't they?
Yeah,
So,
but yeah, once again, the HR department at Lucasfilm kept kept him kept busy. uh, yeah, let's crack on with the next news item, which I've been loving this series from ILM. They've been pushing out on social media. Their
yeah,
VFX behind the scenes, and they've kind of timed this one really, really well in terms of it's the T-6 Jedi Shuttle from Ahsoka. And
yeah,
we can check out the video. I think I did download it, I believe. Here we go. And loving seeing what ILM are doing, because I'm definitely from a generation that really appreciates what goes into the making of these films and
yeah,
TV and so on. But I think sometimes the content comes at us so fast, like we've been talking about High Republic, you kind of don't pause to think about the making of them. And especially
yeah.
because in the Disney era, we haven't had so much in terms of making of books backing up some of the projects. It's great to see this series coming out from ILM. They've done a lot of great looking stuff on Andor that have been released recently as well. We've had a few of the videos on the show.
There's something so much more sort of tactile about the models that are actually physically made as well.
Yeah,
It goes back to like the original trilogy when obviously like you just hinted at, like we had the making of Star Wars, Empire and Jedi, and to see like the tiny versions of an AT-AT that they'd have to make for some scenes, all the way up to the huge ones, and the effort that went into animating them. Um, it's a skill that sadly is probably dying out now because everything's so digital. But
yeah,
yeah, that for me was a big part of the enjoyment of the original trilogy from my point of view as a kid. And I think when you watch the making of it, you could understand how it worked. You could understand the kit bashing element of get buying all these Airfix kits or whatever that other companies are available, and cobbling together something out of that. It was a real skill to it.
Yep, absolutely. Um, Talking what's happening with Disney. Um, News this week, they're planning a 60 billion investment into not just their theme parks, as the title suggests, but also like their ports, so where their ships sail from as well. Over the next 10 years, indicating they've got 1,000 acres of land available for development across all their locations, which includes Anaheim, Orlando, Paris, their parks in China and Japan, and as I mentioned, the ports in the US states, Asia, and Australia. And being mentioned by the Disney Parks chief as well, that it's going to be focused on story, scale, and fans. What is kind of your opinion of where, if it's going to be, money's going to be spent in relation to Star Wars, where should it be spent and what should it be spent on?
I mean, I would love to see some OT stuff out there. It would be great to have the opportunity to see the stormtroopers that we were used to seeing as kids walking around everywhere.
Yep.
There'd be so many possibilities. I know that Mark Newbold's just come back from the States, having visited the Star Cruiser. So whilst that as a project didn't have perhaps the longevity that they thought it was going to have, something similar to that, but perhaps base it in the original, Star Wars Empire Jedi kind of timeline. I'd like to see something very bounty hunter related. Possibly even some more not Star Tours, but that kind of ride similar to like the Millennium Falcon ride, which is fantastic. Have you been on that one, Brian? The
I
Falcon one?
haven't been to Galaxy's
Yeah,
Edge, so in 2 weeks'
yeah,
time, I'm
yeah.
going to be making my
Oh,
first trip to Batuu.
well, there you go.
So
I,
this is the perfect time for me to think about
yeah,
what needs done. John Scott Glover in the comments there commenting that he'd love to see a Star Wars zone at Paris and making it
yeah.
accessible for the whole of Europe. I believe they are working on a Star Wars zone of sorts, nothing to the scale of Galaxy's Edge, but
There
something.
was talk that
Yeah, there's
instead of
something
having the
close to
Falcon,
the Marvel. Is it the Marvel University or the Marvel Academy that's there?
yeah, I think there was some talk at Paris instead of having the Falcon as the main ship there was going to be an X-wing. But then I heard rumors that it had been shelved, the whole project. But yeah, I mean, if they're going to start throwing money around like that, then they really do need to start putting some decent stuff into Paris. Absolutely.
Yeah, Avengers Campus. I was almost there. It was going to be my
Yeah.
third guess.
You know what you meant.
You know what I meant. But yeah, I'm kind of looking from Galaxy's Edge, having never been, going to be there in 2 weeks' time. I kind of look at that the immersive experience doesn't work on the scale that they've tried to do it in, I don't think. So make it a Star Wars land that taps into all the different timelines and characters from different timelines instead of this focus on a
Yeah.
particular time and um, in terms of it being sequel trilogy kind of related to that kind of era. Because I don't think it's going to bother too many people if you round a corner and see a young Harrison,
Yeah.
a young Han Solo, and
Yeah.
Princess Leia, and then you turn the next corner and you see Rey and Kylo Ren. I don't think that's going to upset anyone because I think you're there
No.
for the experience of Star Wars ships, characters, and settings rather than
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, it's not just about sort of like cancelling everything else and just going back to the good old days, if you like.
yeah,
There should be a bit of everything there. Another thing as well, if they're going to start spending that sort of money, it's about time we had something in the UK. So instead of having to go over to Paris, there's plenty of deserted theme parks here that they could pick up on and turn into a Star Wars theme park in its own right.
yeah. As Philip says, he sort of commends them for trying to make it canon and immersive, but it's tough to do because Star Wars always growing and evolving. I think that's kind of right as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously, they got the idea of making it an immersive experience. I always say this off the back of secret cinema that had here in the UK that did it incredibly well. But when you've got a defined number of people who are kind of encouraged and invested in the idea of going along and being part of an immersive experience, I don't think that's the same when you're necessarily when you're on holiday and you're vacation and you don't necessarily want to go dressed up as characters like you would if you were going to secret cinema in an evening kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think secret cinema was that about 7 or 8 years ago now.
Probably longer
The
because we're
Empire
getting
Strikes
old.
Back. Yeah, no. A friend of mine put some pictures up the other day on Facebook, I think, of when he went. It looked absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it was the
I'm
anniversary
excited.
of it just this past week.
Yeah,
I can't remember
yeah,
how many years it was, but yeah, Empire
yeah,
Strikes Back 2015,
yeah, yeah. I
so
missed that one.
8 year anniversary. But yeah, that was incredible. And Secret Cinema do it incredibly well, and nobody else has been able to replicate the way that they do it for whatever franchise it is, whatever film it is.
Yeah.
Never go to their horror ones. It's the only thing I would say. I went to what one was it? Was the zombie one? So many days later, I can't remember the name of the film.
Oh, 28. Yeah,
Yeah,
28
the
days
20.
later.
Oh, scared. It's the other thing. Screamed like a little child. But yeah, it's difficult to do that on the scale of a whole park, I think, and it hasn't quite worked. But I applaud them for what they've made of it. I think, having not attended, but sort of viewed it from afar.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. I think they
yeah.
did.
As,
They
as
did a
James
Greek.
Woodcock says here, Falcon should have been in Docking Bay '94, and I would think that would have been cool.
Yeah,
If you just had little Star Wars zones.
yes, definitely, definitely. I think Mark and Matt earlier this year went to Secret Cinema, which was the Greece themed one, and I think they had a great time. So it doesn't just
Yeah,
have to be for Star Wars, but yeah,
doesn't
we could do some more.
definitely. So yeah, I think I would like to see sort of the Star Wars parks expanded and investment in
Yeah.
different time zones, different areas. I think it needs more rides as well than they've got at the moment.
Well, the beauty of it is if they did decide to invest in putting something into the UK,
Yeah,
because we haven't got anything remotely like it, we'd be more than happy to have Star Tours just sort of duplicated and brought over here, and Galaxy's Edge. Yeah, do it.
yeah.
So they haven't got to exactly invest much in that in terms of development. It's just a sort of like carbon copy. Um, but yeah, it does seem a bit odd that for a country that's so heavily involved in and its fan base is so huge
I
for the
wouldn't even
franchise.
necessarily think they need a theme park, but something along the lines of what Warner Brothers have done with Harry Potter.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
People in the comments want to know if Mark went as a pink lady to Greece. I'm pretty sure there'll be pictures out there that we can post later.
Oh well, oh well, oh well. I'm not sure.
Yeah, right. We should crack on with the rest of the news because there's lots to get through. Right, this one I have to be really careful how I pronounce because I've slipped up in it in my rehearsals earlier and it'll get us taken straight off the air.
I'm going to go for Cuutopia.
Cuutopia, yeah, from
Cuutopia, yeah.
from Mattel. Galactic cuteness and Star Wars collide with these plushes, and there's a video that goes with it as well, so we can throw that up on the screen.
Pile
And
the pounds on.
basically, giant cuddly toys.
Yeah.
And who wouldn't want a Vader to cuddle at night?
I was thinking that, yeah, of all the characters to choose. Yeah. Maybe a loft cat. That'd be okay.
Definitely. That is Cuutopia from Mattel. If you want something to cuddle up to at night. If you want something more plastic for at night, I don't know. That's the worst link ever. That's gonna get us taken off here. Oh dear. Let's load up fantatracks.com and we will Hopefully this is going to work. There we go. We're trying something new this week. We're trying to use the website live. Let's see if we can. Got to
Are you,
say
are you, are you
yes.
going to consent to that?
I'm going to consent to the cookies. Hopefully, is it going to let me? Maybe not. Let's try again. Let's load it again. Let's load it again. We're going to try. Here we go. This is a complication of trying to do things live. Is it going to work? Is it going to work? Not sure it is.
No, so I think you're
It's not happy with me. It's not happy with me.
Okay.
Oh dear. What can we do?
Well, we can talk.
Technology.
We can
people.
talk about the. we can still talk about the various repacks. Sorry,
Oh,
new
here we
figures that
go.
come
I've
out.
got it working. I've got it working.
Oh,
Technology.
hurrah!
Technology.
Hurrah!
There we go.
Hey.
The frame was locked on me. Here we go. We'll scroll down. We'll see what Hasbro had in store. Is it going to be exciting? Yeah. It's going to be repaints probably. Here we go.
Oh yeah, of course.
Star Wars Black Series Force FX Elite Sabine Wren lightsaber, which kind of nice, but
I think it's quite a limited market, really. I mean, I think those are the sort of things that if you want them, you'll go and find them at Galaxy's Edge.
Yep, $270 as well. That's kind of a tough price point.
Yeah.
You've got the Black Series clone Captain Rex, $135.
That's nice. Yeah, I do like that one. Phase 1, very nice.
And also in the Black Series, you've got Star Killer and Troopers.
Which is it's a great set, but it's expensive.
I was just looking at that. I was like, is Mr. Newbold...
That's not a typo.
Got done a typo there, because I'm like, should it be $19.99? But yeah, it's a nice looking figure. It's always nice to see Star Killer pop up. I kind of been expecting him to appear in the TV series because they've kind of hinted so much towards his sort of gaming legacy and elements from his games.
Well, I mean, they've gone very much with Sam Witwer's likeness on that as well. So I'm expecting he's going to turn up at some point.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm agreeing with Phil Parker. It's not 110 quid's worth.
No,
definitely
not. Not when you've got 2 stormtroopers thrown in with it. I mean, obviously that's the cover of the classic cover of the game. But yeah, repacked stormtroopers effectively.
Yeah. In the Galaxy of Heroes line, you've got Raven.
Yeah.
Always going to be hugely popular. And I figure everyone's kind of been hoping for, with Rey's acting and Ahsoka just being mind-blowingly so good. Baylan Skoll coming to the Black Series.
Yeah. I mean, that's a brilliant figure. I mean, what an absolute fantastic character he has been in this series. And I tell you what, if the character does carry on with a new actor, they've got big boots to fill.
Yeah. Shin Hate as well, who's getting her own fan base as well, I think.
Yeah. Made me turn to the dark side anyway.
Mr. Newbold saying there that Baylan is an awesome sculpt. I think I saw him mark online earlier this week saying that he was going to be picking up that figure.
Yeah.
And Philip also asking the question that it's going to be interesting to see what he's looking for in Peridia, and I kind of agree in that. That's going to be something I'm going to bring up when we do the chat on Ahsoka at the end of the show. Again, in the vintage collection now has Chopper.
I like that. I like the card back as well. That's really cool. Yeah, it's nice.
And also in the vintage collection,
your old mate Krennic.
My old mate Krennic. Looking great there, looking great. And his white uniform, not as much a mess as Thrawn's is, with his little stains and
No,
marks and so on it.
yeah,
And
bit
actually, I'm going to
clever.
give credit to on the vintage collection. We've got Hu Yang as well. I'm going to give credit. I've quite
Yeah,
enjoyed this droid in Ahsoka. He's had a purpose and a storyline.
yeah, it's been really good. Nice to see David Tennant acting the part as a Cyberman. Really cool.
Yeah. Um, Philip making a comment that Chopper's channeling the R2 SAS very well.
Yeah,
And that brings
yeah.
us to the end. That was Hasbro Pulse 2023 as it pertained to Star Wars.
Yeah, there was some sort of what do they call them? Uh, Ones that they're pipeline reveals, and they were pretty much all repacks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's Hasbro for you.
apart from Balin and his apprentice, there wasn't really a lot of new stuff out there. Oh, the Star Killer, but that was just ridiculously priced anyway.
Yeah. I'm going to throw
Mm.
you back up on the big screen whilst I fix out the
Ooh.
camera that I broke.
Uh-huh.
Trying to fix the website. Let's see if we get it back. Here we go. We've
Hey,
recovered. We've recovered, people.
well done.
Technical errors. Technical errors. Um, Technical errors would get me the sack, but some people haven't been sacked. Look at the slick link, but they're actually on strike.
Hey.
The Writers Guild, they've been sitting down with the studios, which has included Disney's Bob Iger, in negotiations which have gone on for a few days, and it's looking somewhat positive, I would say, but nothing's agreed until everything's agreed. But
Yeah,
interesting that the top honchos from all the sort of big companies are those most heavily involved in it. Because I think we have to remember that from the studio's point, there's 300 studios that are all part of their collective bargaining group, the AMPTP. But really, they're being led by Disney, Universal, Warner Brothers, and Netflix
yeah, yeah,
in these talks. Um, and it looks like they're heading in the right direction when it comes to the writers. There's not been much word when it comes to the actor side of things, but I think it's important that they resolve the writers, because as soon as you get the writers back working, you're developing projects again, because there's no point resolving. It's kind of, you've got to do things in sequence. There's no point resolving it with the actors just now if you're going to have nobody writing material for them to act.
yeah, yeah. How long's this been going on now?
140 days.
Right.
And the interesting thing is, and it's not really been heavily reported, but the interesting thing is, historically, your Writers Guild has been pretty much split between those who write for films and those that write for TV. But since
Yeah,
the dawn of streaming, that kind of line's been blurred a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
So TV writers are moving into film writers are moving into TV. So they've got vested interest in both. So they're not, as historically, been able to split the writing group and negotiate and strike a deal with the writers, and that'll get enough votes to get an agreement on the table, and the
well,
TV writers will be upset.
yeah,
You've
and
kind of in
also,
this zone where the writers for once are kind of unified, and that's
yeah,
kind of
and
made them
actors,
stronger.
yeah, actors that would traditionally you would only see in feature films have migrated to the small screen because it's been, you know, a much more lucrative idea for them.
Yeah,
But I mean, that has blurred things as well considerably because nothing's off limits these days. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I'll do a TV series. Why not? Yeah,
yeah, and that's made it, I think, harder for the studios to break the guild.
yeah,
So they've actually had to engage in real discussions this time, instead of let's speak with a handful of the powerful movie writers and we can get them on board, and that gets us enough votes
yeah,
for an agreement. We can ignore what the TV people are saying. Um,
yeah,
so it's interesting the way it's gone and the way it's dragged out. And I don't know what the deal's going to be, because I've kind of been looking at it and trying to see, like, where's the middle ground. And there's not, because if you're writing an 8 episode TV project, and it means you're only going to be writing for 3 months a year, it's very difficult for you to pick up work for the rest of the 9 months. So how do you equate 3 months worth of work into a year's value?
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
hard thing, because you're no longer doing
I mean,
22 episode series, so you're no longer working
well,
8-9 months of the year.
I mean, it's a fairly straightforward thing to resolve, really. If traditionally they've been signed up for a 22, 23 episode setup, if now we're going to be limited to 8 episodes per thing, then you're going to do 3 things a year rather than one.
It's
It's
never going to work, because you'll never
well,
step out of one project and be able to step into the next, and they don't overlap. And your
well, no, but they'd
contracts
have
are
to.
always going to have conditions that you can't work on other projects whilst you're working on ours, and um,
Look,
it
I'm trying
just,
to sort things out here, Bri.
I
Let's
know,
get more positive.
I know. But I think the real reality of it is, it's when you sign up for one project, you're pretty much wiping yourself out for the year, and
Yeah,
that's the problem. You need a systematic change in the way that TV writes, or series award, because everything, it's this time of year when projects are being greenlit, and everything's
yeah,
getting greenlit at the same time. So everybody then wants to start, right, let's start writing it, let's start developing it, and so on. So everybody's working on the same timelines, and it's just when films and TV are released that are different rather than when they're getting made.
yeah.
So you're never going to land on your feet lucky enough where you can pick up 3 projects a year. I just don't see it ever happening.
Mm,
John Scott
mm,
Clever asking in the comments, isn't the main issue AI? I kind of think that's just a distracting factor. It's more on the side of the actors, um, where they're being scanned. And it's very common, you step onto a set, you're going to get scanned, and it's generally so for continuity and so on. But people are now
yeah,
concerned that they're going to take their images and use them for other nefarious means. And when you read some of the contracts, they're so open worded as to usage, and people do have a genuine concern. But I think that's an easily rectified one.
yeah.
Mr. New was saying, put Mr. Neely in charge of sorting the strike. But yeah,
Thank you, mate.
I don't see where the solution is going to come from, because it boils down to their annual earnings. So unless you can find a way where people are contributing enough to make their annual earnings justified, the only way
Yeah,
I can see it is that you have studio contracts. So you sign up for X number of weeks work with that studio, so you move between projects for the same studio.
yeah. That makes sense. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
which could be more workable, but it could get really messy, because you could end up finding that you're having to put writers onto a series that makes no sense to have that writer on, because it's not a genre that
yeah.
they're on. But in order to
But yeah, but
meet their contractual minimum, I've kind of
yeah,
got to
it
put this
doesn't
comedy
necessarily.
writer on a serious documentary series. It's
Yeah, I think I don't think it needs to clash quite as much as that, but I suppose a pool of people that you can sort of work on within the
yeah.
studio structure would work. Yeah, no,
But
that's a
and I
valid
think
point.
that kind of makes sense what you're saying there. But again, it then creates a scenario probably where you've got less writers working,
Yeah.
but those writers who are working are earning money to survive,
Well,
and then
you'll
you're going to
effectively
have
have.
a smaller pool to pick from.
Yeah, you'll effectively have people that you've got sort of like on pretty much like how freelancers work, where they've got people on their books that are paying them for being on their books, not necessarily using them.
Yeah,
You know, uh,
I think
it needs
you
to
could.
get
It's
sorted.
difficult because you can then generate a situation where you've got people attached to studios who are doing really well, earning good money, able to survive, and then you've got everybody else. So you're almost exasperating the situation for those that don't get a studio deal. It's
Yeah,
very difficult.
yeah,
It's so complicated. I don't know where the solution is going to be. It's going to be interesting to see where it comes from.
yeah. There'll be winners and losers, mate. There always are.
Always is. It's not an easy solution. So I think when you see people come and pay them more money, pay them what they're worth, it's just not that simple.
Yeah,
And of course, the writer's strike has heavily affected promotion for Ahsoka. We've heard very little from those that created it, um, and those that perform in it as well. Um, purely, I think it's fair to say that it's not been promoted in the way that everybody would have liked for it to have been promoted. We've kind of
What have
missed
the
out.
viewing? Yeah, what the viewing figures been like?
You're right about 1.2 million Disney Plus US viewers per episode.
That seems
Uh,
quite low.
it's on the low side, and um, I think you have to recognise that Disney Plus isn't a huge subscription base, and it's a wide cast subscription base as to what people's interests are. Um,
Yeah,
when you look at it, it's low. Um, you should really be hitting round about the 1.6 to 2 million kind of mark.
yeah,
But when you compare it to shows that appear on Netflix and Amazon Prime that people call hits, they and just like the likes of Stranger Things. Stranger Things aren't doing huge numbers either. So things that we now
right.
call massive hits in the modern day have
Yeah,
very low view numbers, and this comes all the way back to residuals and how much people are earning. And
yeah,
people are saying, well, like Stranger Things is a global hit. How come the writers aren't getting paid huge sums of money? It's because the audience is, in comparison, very small compared to the 20 million people that were tuning in to watch Friends on a Friday night.
yeah, yeah,
So um, it's difficult to judge it in the world of streaming because it's all so fresh and so new. Um,
yeah.
and
It's a new problem, isn't it?
yeah, and we get very little comment from the studios as to how they gauge and view something as a success nowadays.
Yeah.
Space Whales is where we kind of kicked off the episode. What's your take on Space Whales?
No, no. I mean, you've openly confessed you're not into the animation side of things. So
Yeah,
the Purrgil, they have actually appeared in Rebels. So it wasn't sort of like, where's this all come from? It was there was a lineage to it. But for the people out there that aren't aware of it in animation, it probably came across pretty weird, pretty trippy. Um, I kind of like them. From some angles, they look a little bit like the plant from the Little Shop of Horrors. So for that alone, they're pretty cool.
as I confess, I don't watch the animated, but I kind of dug them because Star Wars has always had space monsters, haven't they?
Yeah, yeah.
And
It's
as
only
Mr.
like the
Newball's
face
pointing
though.
out, if you go back to the 1980s and the Thumboka and the Lando Calrissian books,
Yeah,
you'll find Oswaft in there, who were like giant squid type creatures that used to travel through hyperspace as well. So it's all they've always been there. So I wasn't bothered by the fact that they're space whales. I hated
no.
the whole flying into the mouth and the whole Moby Dick kind of element of it.
Well, they're going to hitch a ride, Bryce. So that's the only way they're going to do it.
Yeah,
So
and John Scott Glover's a comment I've seen a lot as well. The Moya from Farscape as well. Um,
yeah,
and Mr. Newbold encouraging me to make a point. Why have they got hyperdrives in their asses? Uh, this was my big conversation last week. It's just like that's bizarre. If you watch the subtitles, I've always got the subtitles on my TV because my dad's going deaf,
yeah,
and so it's quite interesting watching TV programs with subtitles. You become addicted by it, and
yeah.
just before the whales go into hyperspace, it says powering up. It's like it's like just that's just weird. Um, and Phil Parker points out there's serious side effects to farming in space. Yeah, the carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide, they are just from space travel. If you're in a space whale and they're powering up, it's just as bad as if you're using coaxium. But
I kind of like them. I think that it's quite novel.
yeah,
But
I
yeah,
kind of like the
yeah,
look traveling through hyperspace with them. It was kind of a different look of the traveling through
yeah.
a different galaxy. It was different and unique.
Get a bit of refraction and
Yep.
stuff. Yeah, it's quite cool.
But as I said, the whole Moby Dick thing, where they're in the mouth of the whale, even if they were strapped to the top of the whale, I wouldn't have minded it so much. But just in the mouth, I don't know.
Yeah,
We kind of got the weird thing where Hu Yang and Ahsoka kind of had this conversation of when she was a kid at the Jedi Temple and they used to read stories.
Yeah.
And I have to put this, I'm reading this comment from Phil, so I have to put it up. Many a whale has accidentally shot into hyperspace by letting rip. It's so true. uh, dear. Mr. Newbold saying the
Unwanted
hyperspace
travel.
effect was awesome. Was it the hyperspace effect or was it a fart? We'll never know. Uh, this is a level we get to on this show. But really interesting interaction between Hu Yang and Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And he started telling tales from the history of the Jedi archives that he used to tell to Ahsoka when she was a kid. And he started it the way that a Star Wars film will start, with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
Are we
I
now
quite like
suggesting that Hu Yang is the author of all Star Wars?
that. Yes. Why
Because that was
not?
kind of George's kind of take, wasn't it? That the original
Yeah.
trilogy, or at least the original A New Hope film, it was telling the film from the droid's sort of point of view, or at least in the very
Yeah.
instance of the start of the film. And
Yeah.
so is it now Dave and George's creation, and Hu Yang is the droid from the Clone Wars? Is the droid narrating the entire Star Wars story from his memory banks?
Well, his character goes way back, doesn't it? Hu Yang's sort of like about 1,000 years old or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So yeah,
potentially.
he's 25,000 years old, which is where they're going to
Oh,
start the dawn of.
25,000 years maybe.
Yep. So,
Right.
which is the exact time frame when they're basing the Dawn of the Jedi film that's going to be coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's
Almost
going to
as
be right
old as
there
my
at the
first
start.
one. Yeah.
Wasn't there for the sequel trilogy, so in fairness, we can now exclude that from ever being repeated. So it works out
Wow.
better
Yes.
for me.
Yes. It could be interesting to see what happens with that now that we've
Yeah.
got these sort of two galaxies that sort of can intertwine and sort of change things and more. Yeah. Let's see
Yeah.
what happens about the sequel trilogy. Maybe it never existed.
Maybe not. John Scott Glover, older than Yoda, older and wiser.
Yeah.
And so we got the episode title as being Far, Far Away, which I
Yeah.
wish I'd downloaded it. I didn't. But if you watch Dave Filoni being interviewed on stage, on the live stage at Celebration last year, when asked where Ezra was, his answer was Far, Far Away, which was a nice callback.
Yeah.
So we kind of kick off. Have I missed
Sabine in the
something?
prison cell.
Sabine in prison. Have I missed?
Yeah.
I've gone out of sync here, haven't I?
No, that's fine.
I'm going back. Did we start off with Sabine in jail? I think we did.
Yeah. Sabine was in jail, yeah.
Yeah. And she has an interesting interaction with Balin.
Yeah.
About is he going to deliver on his promises? And it's an interesting one because Balin still doesn't strike me as being an evil person. I think he's got his ambitions, and I think Sabine is maybe a tool that can help him achieve his ambitions somehow.
He's not even duplicitous though, is he? He doesn't seem to be playing one off the other. He just seems
No,
to be
he
just
seems to be quite open
stepping
as
his
to
own
what
path.
his intentions
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
So I always find their interactions interesting.
Yeah.
And obviously he returns to the bridge of the ship. We'll call it a ship. The giant ring.
I loved the way that came out of hyperspace.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. The animation on that was fantastic. The different colours and stuff that came off, it was brilliantly done.
Interesting observation from Phil Park as well, that he thinks Balin will be the catalyst that awakens Sabine's powers. Very possible.
Yeah.
Dead whales, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Which was kind of creepy. In
Bone
a nice kind of
Right.
way. I kind of dug it.
Yeah. Which does leave us with a bit of a problem, because if the whales have gone there to die, how is Ahsoka going to get off the planet if
Well, not all of them. Some of them are just going for the funeral.
Yeah.
But we got a little glance of Peridia, which is always going to be interesting. I think when you were in a new galaxy, how far are they going to push the envelope and make it different? But they didn't push it too far. Um,
No.
Very ancient, very Night Sister oriented, and we sort of see their castle, I guess we would call it, very reminiscent of Vader's castle. I felt.
I thought that. Yeah, I thought that. Quite simple in design. Yeah.
Yeah, and their ship comes into land, and we meet.
Last, and that ship was last seen in Spaceballs, I think, wasn't
Yeah, and we meet the Night Sisters, or the mothers.
it? Yeah.
Um,
Now again, these are characters that have appeared in animation. So for anybody out there that's going, oh, this is all getting a bit tricky now and a bit out there, it's only treading on ground that's already been sort of laid out.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
interesting characters. These are almost these are very akin to like the Emperor's sort of dignitaries that he had in Return of the Jedi. That kind of vibe.
yeah, and obviously at the top of the castle is basically the equivalent of what we had back in the Star Wars
Yeah,
galaxy. Obviously connecting the two, so you can sort of chart the hyperspace lane between the two. I guess is the theory there. Phil also putting out very Shakespearean. I did think that as
yeah,
well, and
yeah,
John Scott Clever as well putting out Claudia Gray, Stargate alumni amongst many other things. The the lead mother, that'd be the way to
yeah,
describe her,
yeah. The
um,
middle one, yeah,
and that's her right there,
yeah.
exhibiting
The
their abilities through the Force.
playing with the
Um,
Bakugan. Yeah,
Not fans of the Jedi, especially that stinky one right there. Just reeking of Jedi.
yeah. I
um,
like how Sabine was referred to as it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um, Interesting because I know effectively, I don't know if it's the same in the animation, but certainly from literature point of view, the Night Sisters generally didn't like men.
right.
Very sexist, and men were looked down upon. And so when this talked about this stench of Jedi, they're actually referring to another female, which I kind of thought may be interesting because you've got Balin right there as well.
I
And
think they were picking up on Balin. Yeah, I think they were picking
so,
up on him.
is what's their thoughts on Balin and Shin? Because I'm
Yeah,
assuming they're not going to like either of them either.
yeah.
But yeah,
It's a bit it's a bit ambiguous as to whether they're Jedi or not. Anyway, so I mean, obviously Balin was at some point.
yeah. Obviously Sabine's taken away, locked up in jail on the planet, and we're kind of left with Balin and Shin having a conversation, which gets quite interesting and in depth a little bit as to Balin's intentions. He's effectively saying that he's been called to this planet. He's got a journey to go on here,
Yeah,
um, but he's kind of alludes to that there's someone here calling out for him, but we don't really quite learn too much about that.
someone or something. Yeah, yeah.
John Scott Clever also asking interesting question here. How can they detect Ahsoka coming from a different galaxy but not Ezra in their backyard? Are they interested in Ezra? Is the question I'm going to ask.
I think that they've used him as bait to get everybody else there. I think.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in our little prison, I'm going to call her the Stinky Jedi from now on.
Uh-huh.
Tries to reach out through the Force. There's an almighty rumble. For an instant, we think it's working,
Yeah, yeah.
but then we suddenly realise it's the Chimera arriving.
And that was beautiful to see that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Mr. Newbold making an interesting point here that he thinks that they won't be able to access the Force in that galaxy. Midi-chlorians can't hear them. That's why Thrawn uses witches. This is an interesting
Ah,
point because we haven't seen anyone use the Force on the planet as yet. Even when Sabine was fighting, she doesn't tap into the Force. Don't see Balin
that's a
and Shin
really good,
using it.
yeah, that's a
Thrawn's
really
thing
interesting
was
point.
always he had little creatures round about him that were bubbles in the Force, so he
Yeah,
couldn't be affected by Jedi. We haven't seen that as yet.
yeah,
Could the bubble really be this entire galaxy doesn't allow midichlorians to talk to each other? Um,
possibly, yeah. That's
the
a good point, isn't
witches
it?
are the other thing,
Mm.
another factor.
I loved how it docked as well on that platform there. It was brilliant.
Mr. Newell giving us the name of the little aliens as well. Um,
To
I'm
the
not going to try and
East
pronounce it.
Salamiri. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I just included some really nice shots of the Chimera alive because I thought it was impressive. We sort of headed
yeah,
inside. We sort of see the strength of what they have here in terms of numbers, in terms of TIE fighters. Um,
yeah.
but maybe things aren't as great for them. They're a little bit bashed up. They're a little bit dirty. Not what you would expect from Grand Admiral Thrawn, who's very artistic in his nature. That things should be pristine. You would think. Um,
Yeah.
Perhaps
I mean,
emphasising that is our um, Enoch
mm,
character.
yeah,
How many times
yes.
a day do you think of the Roman Empire? Apparently, that's the thing on social media at the moment. Clearly, this guy thinks about them quite a lot.
What did Enoch ever give us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
They're kind of
Mr.
creepy
Newbold
looking,
also
aren't they?
making bet Thrawn designed all the armour. It's very artisan.
Yeah.
Talking of Thrawn, here he comes.
Here he is. Great entrance.
Yeah. Phil making a comment there. Wasn't a fan of these. Enoch was a ridiculous character. It has the potential to go the way of from the sequel trilogy, the sort of
Phasma. Phasma.
yeah Phasma, if not
Yeah.
handled correctly.
Yeah.
Thrawn makes his entrance. I was intrigued by this sort of like white line, and it was almost like not all of them crossed it. And I don't know if there's a significance here, but there's been a lot of
Is that,
speculation as to
is that a beam of light?
yeah, and I don't know if it's just an artistic thing they've placed it there, but a lot of
Yeah.
talk about whether these people are dead or alive,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
maybe some of them are alive and some of them are dead. And I just wondered if
Yeah.
there's some kind of magical kind of element on the go here.
Possibly.
Um, but no,
Well,
just
I think on subtitles, aren't they're called night troopers, aren't they?
yes,
So perhaps they can only operate in the dark. That's what they're alluding to there with that beam of light,
don't know.
and that might be how they're going to get defeated because they don't operate
Yeah,
in light.
Mr. Newbell
Yeah.
is pointing out it is the edge of the documentary where the force field ends, which is true. But I just thought
Mm.
the shot and the emphasis on it was kind of interesting. I don't know if it's going to come into play somehow. Don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of criticism of the look of Thrawn online. I kind of would have favoured a CGI character a little more elongated, a little more alien looking rather than a humanoid looking Smurf. Um, but
Well, I
it was
mean,
acted so brilliantly by Mars Mickelson
yeah.
that I kind of forgave that it wasn't a great look.
I had no problem with the look. I mean, he he kind of looked more plastic than he actually is, which was a bit weird. Um, almost like what was that kids program, Lazy Town? He got that sort of like Robbie Rotten kind of plastic look
Yeah,
about him.
there's a little element of that.
Yeah, but no, I thought he did a good job. I mean, he was the voice after all for the animated version of the character, and that's nice that they've done that, with him as they did with Katie Sackhoff. Um, so I had no problem with Thrawn. I thought he was good. I thought he was sort of politely menacing. Yeah, he was good.
A lot of comment on the fact he's put on weight despite being marooned. As Phil there, I can make this joke because I'm a fat guy as well. But yeah, that was the kind of thing. I was trying to think. You had to go CGI. You had to make him elongated, ridiculously thin, so he couldn't be humanoid, in my opinion. Um, but I took this screenshot here
Yeah,
because I'm trying to look for what's the clues, because Dave Filoni certainly in his writing tries to leave little clues and then calls them back later. And
yeah,
interesting that the Night Sisters would sort of curtsy towards Thrawn, so they're kind of
yeah,
respecting him and his power. But I'm more intrigued by the fact Balin and Shin looking over at them
yeah,
as if, oh, what's going on here? Why are they subservient to Thrawn in some description?
yeah,
So,
yeah. I didn't really think of it at the time, but yeah,
because you
I
kind of
suppose.
get the feeling there's got to be some kind of bargaining, trading between the Night Sisters and Thrawn here to help each other survive.
Yeah,
So, um, and Thrawn kind of interacts with them all. You can kind of see him sort of measuring up and trying to judge each group of characters. He's introduced to Balin and Shin and kind of quizzes them a little as their intentions. I don't think he holds them in much high regard.
well, he'd heard of Balin, hadn't he? Because he started. He asked him of General Balin Skull, so he knew of him.
Yeah,
Um, so and he said it in such a way as to "I know who you are" kind of thing. And it was like, yeah, I've left the Jedi Order, and it's like a little quip. Oh yes, so many have, or something like that. You won't be the first, or something like
yeah,
that. So I mean, he could have been talking about Jorah Saboth, could have been talking about Anakin, could have been talking about a number of different people.
very true. And Sabine's brought before him as well, and have a little interesting exchange, obviously connected to their history in the animated series. Um, and he's put in a position as to whether he's going to honour um, what Balin has agreed with her and given her the ability to go and find Ezra. And in a cryptic kind of way, he does set
Yeah,
her free in many regards to go and find Ezra. Gives her one of these wolf dog type things, and away she
Wolf Dog
goes.
Horse. Yeah, yeah.
um, Thrawn doesn't seem to care one iota about Ezra.
No, no, which is surprising. The way they were talking as well, it was sort of like, well, yeah, I promised to reunite you, reunite Sabine with Ezra, but just because he's put them together doesn't mean he's not going to go out there and try and destroy them, which is what happens next, isn't it? That they follow them on their own wolf
Yeah.
dog horses. Um,
But then
um,
he kind of turns to Balin and suggests, right, you go kill them all now. And it kind of feels like Ezra's expendable to him, Sabine's
yeah.
expendable to him. He doesn't really care for Shin or Balin, so they're expendable. Let them all go and do their own thing. I don't care one iota about them. And you think
Well, I mean,
if Thrawn's been here on this planet for 9 years, he's got the resources he's got. How could he possibly not have Ezra captured if he was even remotely interested in having Ezra captured?
well, like you say, he doesn't really care about Ezra. All Ezra is he's the bait to get Sabine to come looking for him, which has then opened up the channels from one galaxy to the next so that he can plot his return.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, brilliantly done. And my son, who's been quite picky about the Disney era Star Wars, is really enjoying Ahsoka. So they must be doing something right.
yeah. I picked up on Shin's sort of reaction to the
Yeah.
Thrawn and Balin's conversation, and that she's decidedly not happy and kind of realizes that things aren't really in control here, and that Balin's got his eye on a particular target of something we don't really know, a purpose here, and it doesn't tie in with everything else that's going on round about them. And
I think there could be an element that Balin wants to. He's more than happy for Thrawn to go back to the galaxy that we know and know and love.
Yeah,
But Balin wants to then have this new galaxy and be the ruler of that. It could be as simple as that. That could be his higher purpose.
yeah. Um, we head on over to Sabine, who's on the trail
Mm.
of Ezra. She's been given a little device because Thrawn's kind of told her where his last sort of known location was. But whilst
And
she's on,
it's the same kit that was used on Hoth as well when
yeah,
Han was trying to find Luke. Yeah.
but she's kind of ambushed by some. Well, we're going to call them bandits at this point in time, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
I think so.
and sort of Zuvio esque.
Yeah,
In the hat, she brings out her lightsaber to defeat them in the end.
yeah.
But her little sort of ham radio, kind of broken in the process. So she's kind of snookered as to how she's now going to find Ezra. Where does she start
Yeah,
on an entire planet? What's the chances of finding them within 5 minutes?
yeah.
Um, Back at
The castle, isn't it?
the castle, yep. Which I'd led to believe, if you translate some of the writing, it relates to characters from Jedi Survivor and Jedi Fallen Order. It does, literally, it does.
Does it?
Genuinely, it does. Um, Linking all the way back to the news that kind of broke at the start of the show that there's going to be a third um, game in the
Who knew,
franchise.
right? Who knew?
Who knew? uh, Meanwhile, inside the Chimera, they're loading boxes and items
Mm,
from the Night Sisters'
yeah,
castle onto the ship. Kind of looks a little bit
yeah.
like coffins to me.
Well, that's the thing that's been bandied around, isn't it? These could be some of these zombie troopers, if that's what they are. This could be some of them ready to be sort of brought back to life
Yep.
by witch magic. Interesting stuff.
Yeah, we might have to come back to this kind of little elements.
We're
We'll
gonna,
point it out.
we
Meanwhile, Thrawn's focus is effectively on. We're going to say getting home because he's really in his galaxy, where his people are from, as far as we know. He's heading back towards I'm going to call it the Emperor's Galaxy rather than the Star Wars Galaxy. We give it a
well, he
name,
wants to go.
The Emperor's Galaxy.
Yeah, he wants to go back and resurrect the Empire, doesn't he? So that's what it's all about.
So he's already in the plotting for that. That's his focus. He isn't given one iota of interest into what Balin's doing,
Yeah.
what Sabine's doing, or Ezra. It's not what's in his mindset at all.
Yeah.
And we do get a little bit of a comical light relief in the middle of the episode as well, with Sabine and her dog stroke wolf, who obviously ran off when she was fighting the bandits, so she's now upset of it. Wants to go on foot because the best way to find your best friend on a planet that's tens of thousands of miles wide is to go on foot and ignore the only transport you've got.
Get your dog wolf out. Absolutely.
And she kind of walks off. It kind of follows her. She tells it to get lost, continues to follow her, and eventually they kind of make up.
It's very
And
C3PO and R2D2, isn't it?
they make up primarily because
Yeah.
he smells out this rock.
Yeah.
And it's not
Yumbalumpus.
a rock at all. It's a disguise of a little thing called a Noki.
Are they called a what? A nookie?
A Noki, N-O-K-I.
Isn't that a potato dish from Italy?
As well. I think I've had Noki before. uh,
Oh dear.
Kind of a cute little, fun little alien.
Yeah, I had no problem with these. I thought they were quite cool. Yeah. Yeah.
And Sabine tries to talk to it, and first sentient life she's really sort of, I guess, come across. But I'm going to throw in this comment here. from Phil as well. Could the containers be the necessary equipment to build the device Palpy was using in Rise of Skywalker? Could be. Mr.
Yeah,
Newbold,
yeah.
we all like a bit of Noki. And it turns out that this whole 9 years, all Ezra's been doing has been getting a little bit of Noki. uh, the little thing, they don't have individual names just yet, notices the rebel symbol on Sabine and points out, hey, I've got one of them too. And it suddenly dawns on Sabine that this little thing's thus must know Ezra.
Bearing Ezra's top.
Yeah. All of a sudden there's loads of them.
Yeah.
And they have a strange little conversation, and it kind of leads to the follow me. Meanwhile, Balin and Shin are trying to track her down.
Yeah.
And they notice they're being watched by these bandits. And Balin's quite comfortable at being watched by them. And he recounts a little story to Shin about the Jedi and the Jedi Temple and her place and everything, and making it known to her that he views her as being more important than the Jedi. And he alludes to this bigger thing going on as to why they're there.
Yeah.
What do you think we're leading to? Is it going to be a character like the Joris C'baoth, obviously from the Heir to the Empire novel?
Well,
Is it going to be Snoke? I keep calling it for Snoke.
it could be. It could be was it the Bendu, the character that Tom Baker played in Rebels, which was like almost like a bull kind of godlike creature.
There needs to be some kind. It almost feels like there's either going to be some kind of momentous discovery for Balin, or he's going to encounter someone that's going to strike him down in one hit.
It feels as though it's going to be something so significant that it has an impact on the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, that's kind of where I think it's going to be Snoke.
Yeah, yeah.
But then Snoke, as we know, is effectively just a clone of the Emperor gone wrong. So
Yeah.
how does that fit in? I don't know.
Well, perhaps we'll even see like a better version of a clone of the Emperor.
Yeah.
We might even see the version that we then see in The Rise of Skywalker.
Mr. Newbold saying they're definitely looking to tie something into Exegol. John Scott Glover also making a, is it the planet where the original Jedi came from? I don't think so. I think that's going to be in the film set 25,000 years ago, the Dawn of the Jedi. It's going to cover all that. I don't see it being tied to that at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting. Balin's not concerned with these bandits. He almost wants to interact with them as if they're going to be the ones that take them to whoever is the master on this planet. You would presume that Thrawn and the Night Sisters know who this yet undisclosed individual is.
Well, the bandits kind of look like very sort of rudimentary Praetorian guards, don't they, as well?
Yeah.
So there could be a link to that.
I've gone too far. But then we kind of move on to the Noki village.
To the
Why are they left untouched by the bandits and this big bad that appears to be on this planet?
Yeah.
Night Sisters and Thrawn don't seem interested in them, but the implication seems to be that they knew that's where Ezra was.
I think that's what they're happy for Ezra to be looked after by them, and they've been waiting and waiting and waiting for somebody to come and try and find Ezra, basically.
Yeah. And Sabine notices someone, causes her to smile with great happiness, and of course it is the one and only Ezra Bridger. In red, meaning he's evil. Everything colour-wise has to be a reason. Has he turned to the dark side?
Well, possibly. He's got those piercing blue eyes and the scars on his face. It's definitely Ezra.
Has he become powerful? Has this planet made him powerful? Is he the one that Balin's looking for and Balin just doesn't realise it?
Well, I mean, there's not been a massive amount of interaction yet. Anyway, perhaps he is evil now. Who knows?
And obviously the embrace.
Yeah.
Um,
I like to think he's still a good guy.
he doesn't do anything that gives the impression that he's not, other than wearing the colour red.
Yeah.
And the Noki all seem happy that he's made a friend. But meanwhile, the Night Sisters and Thrawn are deep in discussion about heading back to the Emperor's galaxy. And we kind of end ominously with Thrawn looking out, pondering his next move. And there's nothing that we know Thrawn does that isn't measured.
Good episode. Really good episode.
Yeah. It's left us with a lot of questions, which makes it
Yeah.
make for an interesting couple of episodes. I wonder if we're going to end the series with the reveal of what is on this planet, who is on this planet.
And when Enoch takes his helmet off and he's Kanan. Yeah.
It's I don't know where they're going to go, whether it's going to be something original or not, but it kind of makes me feel there has to be some whole link through to Exegol and the Emperor and cloning and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it is Joris C'baoth, because it ties it into the Empire, and he's there working away some kind of cloning facility.
That'd be cool.
Maybe these
I think
troopers, rather than being dead, are actually a new breed of clone troopers.
Possibly, yeah. It would be good to see some cloning in there, definitely.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm actually left puzzled, which is probably the first time in this series, which is a good thing because I don't know where it's going to go. I had this fear that they're going to drag out Finding Thrawn to the very last episode.
Yeah.
But they've surprised me. I was really disappointed with the last episode. I know everybody loved it, but if you didn't watch the animation, it meant nothing. But it kind of pulled me back in a little bit this episode. I'm quite invested now. I think Ezra's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely think Ezra's bad. There's going to be a sting in the tail there, and I think that's why Thrawn's left him alone.
Possibly. I hope not. I kind of think he could be, but I hope not.
It's interesting. What would you like to see next?
What would I like to see next? I would love, even if it's only a cameo, I would love to see Han, Luke, and Leia, Chewie, 3PO, and R2, and the Falcon. Even if it's just a glimpse of them, I would love to see that. I'd love to see Admiral Akbar, and I'd love to see who else? Just some good legacy characters, but there for a reason.
Yeah.
But still, just in cameo roles. Because the one thing that we were robbed of, we never had Han, Luke, and Leia together again after Jedi.
Yeah.
And I think if anybody's going to do it, it'll be Filoni. So, yeah.
I think on that note.
What about yourself? What about you?
I don't know what I want. I kind of want Joris C'baoth because I'm a literature kind of guy.
Yeah.
It would be great to have that character because he was so iconic.
Yeah.
Back in the time. And I would love it if he was linked somehow to Sifo Dyas and he's out there with his little cloning facility.
Yeah.
But yeah, Phil's going out with the one from the left field there. Jackson rocks up and saves the day. Which could happen.
I'd be up for that.
Could happen. Plenty of grass out there for him. But yeah, I think there needs to be a link back to the sequel trilogy somehow. We're into this other galaxy where Exegol is. I would quite like to see more of the Chiss Thrawn's people, because certainly in the novels, Thrawn's working for them to bring down the Empire, really. So is that narrative going to carry over into live action somehow, somewhere? But yeah, I want to understand, in the next episode, I want to understand people's motivations. I want to understand Balin's motivations, Thrawn's motivations, and then I think the last episode is going to be the big reveals.
Yeah.
I would maybe like to see a flashback. I would quite like to see a flashback with Balin and Anakin.
Yes,
would be
that'd be cool. Yeah.
And the one thing that we've all forgotten about is Ahsoka and how she's going to play into everything, because it is her series after all.
Yeah. And where's Hera? Hera's disappeared.
Yeah. So there's a lot of.
And we need to see Zeb as well.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Save him for season 2.
Yeah, possibly.
Okay, so it's interesting. We've gotten to an interesting point, an interesting and confusing point. I think it's good to not know, or not it to be spelled out what's coming next.
Yeah.
And I think on that note, it's a good night. It's a good night moment. End the show. So Paul,
an hour and a half, boy.
I know, a very long episode. Paul, thank you for coming on, talking the news, talking Ahsoka. It's been interesting to get your viewpoint. We'll see you again very soon on Start Your Engines.
Yes, we've got one lined up. I need to meet up with Mark. We're recording some soon. Yeah.
Excellent. So, good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Yeah. See you all
good
guys
night.
next week.
See ya. Bye.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on FanthaTracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at FanthaTracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow FanthaTracks TV to be alerted to new content and be a part of our live shows.